I'm Tom Oberhue. Welcome to segment 1, Lockdown and Permissions. Now we're going to look at the lockdown. We're going to look at it from two different perspectives, the technical side and the conceptual side. We're going to look at these two different perspectives in parallel to see how they relate to each other. The technical is important because it has the 1, 2, 3, the nuts and bolts of the movement. The conceptual is important because it has the big rocks, the big things we need to keep in mind. On the technical side, there are 5 parts to the lockdown. Part 1 is controlling the near side arm. Part 2, controlling the near side hip. Part 3 is controlling the far shoulder, what I'm going to call the landing pad. Part 4 is holding your opponent with 4 on the floor, keeping them flat. And part 5 is putting on that intended lean. On the conceptual side of the equation, there are 3 parts. Part 1 is the landing. Part 2 is securing, and part 3 is turning on the pressure. So let's go through the 5 points of the technical lockdown. Part 1 is controlling the near side arm. And your opponent is going to give you a frame, and your job is to get around that frame or over that frame or under that frame as quickly as possible, not going through it. We're going to employ those pressures that we did before. Contour, sag, and hug. So if I'm in and I'm coming into that landing, I'm going to work to clear the near side arm. I'm going to bring my hip through and get in tight. For me, a key element of landing is that I must be in contact with my opponent. More than just holding him, I need to be able to exert my gravitational pull. I need to connect with him. Secondly, I need to control the near side hip. That's this hip back here. And I can actually do it physically with my hand, either grabbing his gi or putting my hand underneath his hip. But I can use any other barrier or blocker as well. I can use my back knee by bringing it up. So if I'm in that harness position, my back knee is going to be covering his near side hip. But notice that my foot, right here, needs to fan underneath my butt. If I leave it out, there's a chance that he could scoop it up with his leg, and then things are going to get kind of challenging. So I'm going to keep my heel underneath me. I can also sprawl out. I'm dropping my bottom hip to the floor and getting tight, like this. This, along with a hug, is going to make it very challenging for the opponent to bring his near side knee in and recover guard. That's part 2. Now, part 3, we talk about controlling this far side shoulder. And I like to entitle this area right here as the landing pad. I want to take my chest and land right on my opponent's chest, or this shoulder. So I'm going to get my chest on this landing pad. Visually, to show you, it'd be like putting my hand right here and then having Armand turn towards me. This is his leading edge, and I'm going to control that. I'm going to get pressure on it so that it can't come and turn into me. That's controlling that far shoulder, or the landing pad. Part 4 is the idea of 4 on the floor. And what I mean by that is we take a look at our opponent and say shoulder, shoulder, hip, hip. We really want to get all 4 of those points flat on the floor. Our opponent isn't going to be terribly cooperative, though. So this is where we need to use a sag and a contour in conjunction to kind of feel him out and work to get him flat. It's almost kind of a working or kind of a settling in. It'll take a little time, kind of like riding a bicycle. You'll start to feel it, but your goal is to get your opponent flat so that he's 4 on the floor, he's bearing your weight, there is no edge. The last component of the technical is the intended lean. Off of this harness, I'm going to drive or lean in a 45-degree direction and put some pressure on Armand. It's like he's doing a half crunch. There's an abdominal strain that prevents him from being explosive and really igniting or turning hard towards me. Those are the 5 components of the technical lockdown. Our background, myself and Michael's, has been we've had to really learn from within. We get lots of input from the outside, but most of the time we're by ourselves. That we have to train in our room and create that knowledge. And so we think of the floor as like a laboratory. It's our job to create that learning experience. We don't go out to get the learning and then just use it in a dry, kind of static way. We go out, get information, and then we reapply it to what we're doing. And what that's done is, one, we are problem solvers. We are the creators of information, and we want other people to realize they can do that too, that they're responsible for their own learning when it comes to jiu-jitsu. We also, though, in using that laboratory, we learn how to problem solve, and we learn how to answer the questions that are relevant to us at the moment. And that's through trial and error, and that's through practice, and that's through working with the people in your room. So I think that's a very valuable lesson, is that we teach that. We also have had to look at jiu-jitsu in a more conceptual way. And in creating those conceptual tools, we found that we can affect more athletes immediately than if we teach in a very concrete, structured way. So what we can do is we can talk about the dynamics of an arm bar, or dynamics of a position, and we'll give them the conceptual guideposts. Okay, where's your leverage? Where is your body position? Okay, where are your braces? And when they get that concept in their mind, they then can fit it to their natural temperament and their body. So we have a gym that has a lot of diversity as far as how athletes train or how they look on the floor, but conceptually they're all doing the same thing. By teaching and training conceptually, it allows for multiple right answers, and that really works for us. So we have people that not only create their own knowledge or their own information, but they think about it in a very different way, not in the 1, 2, 3s, but in this conceptual idea. So I think that's going to be very valuable. People are going to get good or learn and improve their game immediately by watching the concepts that we're going to present here. That's important. But they can take the way we've learned and the way we think and apply it, and then create their own thinking process, their own conceptual references, and grow their game as well. So now that we've gone through the 5-point technical, let's match it up to the 3-point conceptual. What I particularly like about the conceptual game, or the conceptual perspective, is that it gives you a little more freedom because there are multiple right answers. The key is to satisfy that milestone, that big concept that you're trying to achieve: landing, securing, or turning on pressure. I'd like to show 2 examples of the landing, and you're going to see they're vastly different as far as the mechanics. But conceptually, they're achieving the exact same goal, and that's the power of thinking about things conceptually. The first one, I'm going to be in Armand's guard. I'm working my pass, so his leg's up on my leg, I'm working, and his hand is on my hip. What I'm going to do now is employ a contour. I'm going to bring my knee up and over, I come through, and I sag back. I'm now on him, I'm connected. I certainly have not made it to the secure concept yet, but I have landed. This is good. Now, second example, I might be coming through a pass and Armand's elbow and knee are together. He's created what we like to call the magical bubble. He's not allowing me in. And if I drive straight into him, I'm going to end up just running into a wall. But if I use that contour and a little sag, I can open this up and find myself in a landed position. So what I'll do is, as I come through, I'll drive my hips forward, walk my hips back, boom, and bring my hips back up. This gives me a high cross sides. I'm now snug, and now I can work on securing and turning on pressure. In matching the technical side and the conceptual side of the lockdown together, we see that number 1 and 2 of technical, near side arm control and near side hip control, correlate with number 1 of conceptual, the landing. This is when you make contact with your opponent and start to employ your gravitational will. Components 3 and 4 of the technical game, controlling the far side shoulder, or that landing pad, and getting 4 on the floor, compose the securing dimension of the conceptual. This is when we control position, when we have positional maintenance. The 5th dimension of the technical game is the intended lean. This is when, from a conceptual side, we're turning on the pressure. We're making sure that our opponent not only has to deal with us on top of them, but he has to deal with that intended lean. There's a force that's driving through him that's stopping him from moving the way he wants to move.
The concept behind what we do in terms of an alive class is the teaching method revolves around what we call I method. So I method is we want to introduce whatever the skill or fundamentals are that we're offering at that particular day, and then in the same class, we want to isolate that with some progressive resistance. So for us, a drill is not repetition against compliant people. For us, a drill is repetition against progressive resistance in an alive environment that mimics the reality of whatever event it is we're training for at that particular time. And that doesn't matter whether we're training law enforcement or a competitive athlete or kickboxing class. That makes what we do a little bit unique. And in terms of question and answers, they're always encouraged. We encourage our students and everybody in the class to ask questions. And my ideal vision of a coach is somebody that's more like a butler. He's there to provide what you need when you need it, but otherwise you don't see him. And ideally what we want to do is create a culture within the gym where people can work together and coach each other, and a coach is more of a facilitator and a butler in that sense. And so that would make our classes a little bit different from a typical class where you're going to go in and you're going to learn 3 or 4 techniques, often unrelated, and then everybody spars. In that kind of environment, you can still get good because you're sparring, but I think the tendency is the people that are natural athletes get good in that environment and the people that aren't get weeded out, and that's not what we want to do.
So I'm going to give you some technical things to think about. The first thing when we're dealing with cross sides and positional dominance and positional maintenance, okay, to me positional dominance is getting to the position that you want. It's like a hierarchy. We want to get to certain positions. For me, I really enjoy cross sides top. So I know mount's supposed to be the end-all be-all. Obviously back with hooks is pretty dang cool too, but I feel like the most fertile and the most creative in cross sides top. That's what works for me. But we definitely like mount top, and we definitely like back with hooks, particularly with the harness. But we're going to talk about cross sides top in conjunction with pressure. My first goal, and I call this the landing phase, is I have to do 2 things in the landing phase. I need to clear the near side arm, and I need to control the near side hip. So that's what we need to do to land. I define landing is when my body is on his body and we have made contact. Houston, we have touchdown. That's what we're looking for. We want to touch. Okay? If I'm out here in orbit, if I'm out here in the stratosphere, we do not have touchdown. We are in his magical bubble, and he can frame and he can move, and he's not in my gravitational pull yet. Okay, I'm trying to break through the atmosphere. So, first order of business is clearing the near side arm. I need to get his near side arm one of 3 places. Here, here, or here. I'm actually going to add a 4th one, but it's just kind of a transitional one, or right here. Okay? Notice it's the extremes. That's where we really want the arm, is in the extremes. Extremely north, extremely south, extremely in, extremely out. What we don't want is any of this stuff pretty much from about 20 degrees around to about, like, I don't know, 85 degrees. Anything right in here gives him power and structure, keeps me away from him. So we're going to employ that contour that we talked about before. So as I'm coming around and I'm working to get to cross sides, I haven't landed yet, I'm going to use my hips to clear that elbow. As Dave is coming to receive me, what I'm going to do is, in this one, I'm going to just contour and roll over, boom, and come down. His arm is down here, that's good. It actually ties right into the second one. I'm going to grab that near side hip. I'm either going to slide my hand underneath his butt, or I'm going to put that knee right in there. Doesn't matter what I use as the blocker. It can either be my hand on his gi, my hand under his butt, or my knee on his hip. But either way, I have to control that near side. So I've landed now because I own the arm, the near side arm, and I own the hip. Okay? If I'm here, and he's here and he hasn't let me land and he's pushing into my hip, I can switch my hip here. Grab a tether, I'm going to hook, and then roll over. Boom. Okay? Now I can continue on, or I can back up and end up cross sides. His arm is up here on my hip. I'm controlling him. I've landed.
I'm in law enforcement, so it's something that I've actually had the ability to do from time to time. In law enforcement, I have a tendency to train, when they're talking about defensive tactics, more of the stand-up world. In all actuality, they deal a lot with wrist locks and things like that. But our job, I mean, anyone who's ever seen cops knows that we put people on the ground a lot. And I've had a few times where I've been in fights with people where I'm actually on the ground with them. And it's good to know that, I know my balance. I know, where to put my body as I'm pulling, trying to get this guy in cuffs. I don't want to just be sort of flopping around on the ground with him. It's just bad for my safety. So I've had a couple of times where I've actually had the need to use this.
I saw a lot of people still kind of doing this, like kind of running in, or they'd move their hips just once, and then he'd still regroup. I really think it's a subtle motion, and it's how you move your entire body in conjunction with the subtlety of your hips. Example, if he gives me this magical bubble, I'm going to tether onto his head. I'm going to get connection. That's first and foremost. If I have no tether, he can disconnect and move. Okay, so I'm going to tether, but I'm going to move my hips north. I'm going to then back up. Then I'm going to roll. I did like 3 things there, right? And it's my responsibility to do it because he's not going to do it for me. We'll give him an elbow and knee. That's it. Good. Yes! Good. And I like how you're parking the car. That's good. Now you can maybe even take your right hand and pull that tricep up to really bring your hip in. But everything you did was good. I like how you're turning. So bring your knee through, drive back. Now pull that. Yes. Good. Now really compress. That's good. Good, yeah, that's it. But you're using your hips, you're kind of cutting them with your hips. Rather than just using your tummy and driving straight in, you're turning, yeah? Good, let me see you do it, Mike. Drive forward, drop that hip, yes. Good, now I still think, freeze, no. See, there's space right here though, feel that? Turn your tummy towards me. And drive your hip north. Come to me. Drive this leg through. Now drive up. Good. Now sit back down. Go back this way. Boom. See how much higher that elbow is? See how much deeper you got it? Does that feel different? Yeah. See what I'm saying? To me, owning the near side hip can mean controlling the gi pant. It can be making your hand a blade and coming right underneath his butt cheek. It can be putting your knee right into his hip.
My advice in most situations, whenever you get frustrated or get to almost a bit of a stalemate position where you feel like I'm not going anywhere, I'm not learning anything new, my advice is always to pick the best guy in the room and go live with him. Just roll with him. Get your butt kicked. Get whatever happens. But in my personal belief is if you go with the best guys in the room, no matter what, you're going to improve and you're going to get better daily. But I think the guys who continually go with the easier guys in the room and the guys who never challenge themselves, those will probably be the guys who have more of these stalemates, more of these plateaus. But I think if you continually just get after it, and just don't allow yourself to fall into the trap of going with guys who don't challenge you.
Okay, let's go on to number 3 then. Number 3 is I'm going to presume I've cleared the arm. I'm going to presume I own that near side hip. I particularly like what's called a head underhook and the shoulder of justice. I'm going to bring my arm underneath Chris's head. I'm going to grab for his shoulder. Sometimes we like to grab for his armpit. Sometimes we like to grab the front armpit. It doesn't really matter. Right now I'm going to dig deep. And if he's really being combative, if he's really being difficult, then I need to institute the shoulder of justice. Dun, da, da. It's my deltoid driving through his jaw. And notice what I just did. I broke kind of one of my rules. My butt's up in the air. But I am putting all my weight through his jaw. And when done correctly, you will leave a nice impression of your gi. Okay, you'll see all the little contours, you'll see the seam. That means there's a lot of pressure there. It's also going to really encourage Chris not to look at me. He's going to want to look away. And that's pretty important because really his escape is to turn to me. If I put all my body weight on his cheek and just sit there, he's going to really start to chill out. He's going to be like, dang.
Is that a Howard gi?
That is a Howard gi, exactly. That's Howard backwards. Excellent. Nice promo for Howard too, huh? But no, the idea there is that if a guy's really being combative and doesn't let me, kind of get into my dominant position, I got to kind of take some steam off. And the way I'm going to take some steam off is institute the shoulder of justice. I am not an advocate of trying to get someone to tap with the shoulder of justice. They may do that accidentally, excuse me, but that's not the goal. The goal is just to chill them out, is to kind of cool them off. So we're going to use that shoulder of justice. Want to only have you spend a few moments with it. You're just going to come under here. You're going to come up and watch what happens. I'm bringing my butt kind of 45 degrees off his shoulders, and I'm driving my deltoid into his chin, okay, or into his jawline. I am hooking here. This is not empty because I don't want him just to pop and drop, like pop and scoot out. I'm going to hook his shoulder. I'm going to come up. I also really like to take this arm and grab his elbow, and then I'm just dropping in. Boom, right there. I'm turning my shoulders. My belly's this way. There's a lot of pressure on Chris. I definitely owe you a beer. I'm giving you an order of kind of the way I like to do them, but you can drop one emphasis to go to another. Once I get this arm in here, I've landed, here's the lockdown. The lockdown comes with head control, and then I either want my hand elbow to his hip, hand on the bicep, because that prevents him from getting an underhook. As Chris goes for an underhook, it's really hard for him to get that underhook when I have my hand on his bicep. This is the secondary position. I don't like this as much, but it's pretty effective. If we put our elbow on their hip and their hand on their bicep, when Chris tries to go for that underhook, I always have the inside position. Okay, so it sets it up early that he can't get inside of me. Because if I'm here and he pops and comes underneath my armpit, see, now I'm in trouble. Now he's already almost to my back. I need to throw on the diaper, or I need to do something else to get away from him. So I'm at the very least going to be here. But preferred is for me to get an underhook on him. Because what I want to do is I want to set up on this piece of real estate, I call it his landing pad, okay, or his on the runway. Okay, an airplane coming in, I want to land on that runway. So I'm going to do a harness, I'm going to come underneath his arm, I'm going to lock, and I'm going to put my head right in the landing pad. Boom. Okay, from this position, now I can institute my hug, I can institute my contour. If Chris really starts to get turning towards me, I'll come back to the shoulder of justice. If he doesn't, I'm going to keep my head here, and I'm going to keep him 4 on the floor. It's really important for me to get him flattened out. The last thing is an intended lean, but we can't do that until we've really stapled him to the mat. Okay? So you're going to come from here. You have the shoulder of justice set up. At the very least, I want you here. This prevents him from the underhook. You can keep playing the shoulder of justice, and you're on him. He should be impaled by your weight. You're in good control here. If you can, though, you want to get underneath his armpit, grab your hands, lock them in, and drop your head.
You know, I wrestle everybody, big, tall, short, and small, so I think it adds like a lot of depth to a person's game because you have to get used to dealing with like the small guys and the huge guys. I mean, with this, I'd say like with the bigger guys, it's like that sometimes is tougher mentally because you have to be like perfect with everything you do, and you can't always like sweep them as easy or control them as easy as like a smaller guy. But a smaller guy might help bring out like the speed in your game. So I think it adds a lot of overall depth and also just humility, like I talked about, because everyone's tough in their own way.
This is securing. We haven't locked it down completely yet, but we're setting up. So first we land, second we secure, third we lock down. Once we lock down, permissions are aplenty. You feel comfortable, or you feel like you're over him? The one thing it looked like to me from on top was, we talk about his center line. I want you to hit him here. I don't want you to be either right on his center line, like right on his sternum, or on his far pec. Because if I get onto his far pec, it's almost like I'm like that wave, I've gone over him. So what I really want to do is scoot back, and then I want to come in here. Right? So now he's feeling that pressure. Right? You're feeling it? Yeah. Right. So I don't want to be here or here. I want to be here and going this way. Yeah? Right. And we want to really try and stay off our knees as much as possible. That's where we're going to either like just sprawl to the ground, so my hips are just smashing the mat, or I'm cutting my hips one way or the other. Try it again. Good. Come back further. There you go. Good. Excellent. That's better. Do you feel a little stronger there now?
Yeah.
Good. Good. Back up even a little more, Mike. Just kind of shuck yourself back about an inch. Good. And then, yes, there you go. That looks better. Good. There you go. Good. Now, go back square again for a second. Like, put your hump. If you go to here, try and get this knee up underneath his armpit, right? Or maybe straighten this knee out and bring this knee to his hip. Okay, so here, and then drop as slow as you can. Get off your legs. Good. Hop, hop, hop. That's it. Good. There you go. See, that's going to be really tough for him to deal with. See, this knee is preventing that. I mean, Ka'a'a has a good near side knee. But if you drive it right in here, he can't contort like Gumby because you have his shoulders down. You stapled him to the floor. This hip is low. Your chest on him. Yeah. You feel how that works? So you really got to come back to drive in. If you just drive in prematurely, you're going to go past him. So you're really trying to impale his near side rib. That's your crash pad. I think the first 4 techniques are very mechanical. Okay, it's clearing the near side arm. It's controlling that near side hip. Right? It's getting that underhook so you get the shoulder of justice. It's getting that other underhook so you can get the harness. That's all very mechanical. This 5th one is a little more conceptual. It's an intended lean. It's an intended lean. It's sagging with an intention. Okay, so let's say I get into all this, and this is what I call the lockdown. First we were landing, second we were securing, now we're locking it down. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to get into all those great positions. So I'm here, boom. Okay, so maybe I'm like right like this. Okay, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to do an intended lean. I'm kind of hugging him, but I'm going to lean right off his hip, kind of right off of Harmon's left shoulder. So I'm going to go here, and I'm going to start to lean this way. Chris is going to kind of feel like he's doing a half sit-up. Okay, there's a lot of tension in his belly. He's uncomfortable. I want to create a sensation of torque or tension in his body, because when there's that torque or tension, he loses his ability to be explosive, he loses his ability to be supple, he loses his ability to move. I want to put tension on him because that locks him down. He's in a constant state like this. It's hard to move when you're getting, that kind of sense. It's an intended lean. Now that lean is going to be mobile. The moment he wiggles, I have to calibrate my lean to his wiggle. It's not a static lean because it's based on where he is and your orientation to him. The only analogy that hits me is it's like riding a bicycle or riding a surfboard, which I've never done, or being on a snowboard, which I have. There's a sense of that balance. You got to feel it. And once you hone in on it, you're like, there it is. You can feel it. So you're just going to have to experiment with that intended lean. Also, listen to your partner, because there's a special sound that comes out of your partner when you find the intended lean. It tends to be like this. Or what is it? Rosebud, right? They're almost dead. They're not quite dead, but they're almost dead. Right, so what you're going to do, shut up, okay, is when I'm right here, I'm going to lean, and there's going to be that tension. He's not comfortable. Good, start to move. As he starts to move, it's very difficult because I'm really keeping their pressure. If I lose anything, that's fine. Go back to the secure. Okay, go back to the secure. But what you're doing is you're making him work extremely hard just to stay alive. You're on top, shooting him down, shooting him down. While he's trying to find any sense of mobility, you're starting to set up those permissions, which is where we're going next. But find the intended lean, and what I'm saying here is, let's look at it. I've controlled point A, I've controlled point B. I've controlled point C, I've controlled point D. What's left is I put weight into that direction. Okay? I'm strategically 1, 2, 3, 4. That's the mechanic. 5 is the intended lean in that direction. It bears him down so he doesn't have an ability to move. You're just binding him up. Permissions. We define permissions as the merge between two areas or concepts. Let me explain. Positionally, we want positional maintenance and dominance. We want to be able to control a position and dominate it, always getting better, always getting tighter, always getting heavier. That's positional maintenance and positional dominance. Submission. That's a defining characteristic of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, the ability to tap out your opponent. What we're trying to do with pomissions is put the two together, that we have that positional dominance and positional maintenance at the same time as we're getting the submission. We don't give up one for the other.
Tom's pomission game, it's the evil twin of Michael's transmissions game, and I think somehow they've synergetically fed one another in that regard. So it's a nightmare to wrestle with Tom.
To illustrate the pomission concept, let's go through an arm bar without consideration of position and pressure, one that we've commonly seen. I'm at side mount on Armand, and I have his arm. I'm going to pull it up tight, grab his low sleeve. I come around, and then I'm going to step over. And this was an arm lock I tried quite often. I'd come over, I'd pinch my knees, and as I turn, there's a moment where he can get out. Even though I'm considerate of the mechanical sides, pinching my knee, pulling my heels in, I'm trying to be as technically tight as possible, there always felt to me to be a moment where he could always get out. There was a chance where I was rolling the dice and seeing if I'd get it. And that was frustrating. I didn't like the fact that I was in this awesome position, and yet I was kind of rolling the dice to see if I could tap him out. So in the room, we kind of workshopped, we thought about it, we talked, and we came up with this concept of permission. So let's do the same arm lock, but let's be thoughtful of position and pressure. So here we are in that same side mount position. I'm going to gather the arm, going to grab the sleeve, and I'm going to come over. But this time, notice I'm going to slide my foot in, boom, underneath his armpit, and step over. I'm going to stay on top of him. Now, I plan out. I'm going to grab his arm, and in the position, I bring my hips forward for the arm lock. Even if I lose this, I'm still on top. I'm still have my weight on Armand. But here, I'm not falling away. He's under me. I'm controlling position and weight.
Because his smearing and pressure that he places on you is so tight that it actually feels like a lot heavier person is actually on top of you. And he uses this great top game technique to smear into you and maintain a good position while he's placing a submission on you, hence the idea of a pomission. He maintains a great position on you while placing a submission and getting an armbar on you without having to actually lose the position that he has.
The way, and I always got frustrated with this, the way I would do this arm bar is I'd pull this arm up, I'd maybe grab my collar or grab my shoulder, I'd punch my hand down, I'd step over, and then as I'd fall back, like, I don't know, 3 times out of 10 at least, I'd go like this, and he'd pull his elbow out, and he'd scramble, and I'd lose him. And I was falling back into this submission. And I found it frustrating. And there's certainly technique that I can do to make this tighter. I can pinch my knees, I can do some stuff. But I still thought, I don't like the fact that in one geography I have positional dominance, and then I have to travel to another geography to get the submission. So, partly out of frustration, and partly out of accident, I kind of stumbled upon the idea of a pomission. So here's what a pomission would look like. Rather than me falling back, what I want to do is I want to use my pressure. I want to use my positional dominance to finish the move. So when I get here, I'm going to grab, I'm still going to punch across, I'm still going to step over, but rather than me falling back, I'm going to pinch and I'm going to stay on him and I'm going to drive my knees forward. Even if I lose his elbow and Chris starts to roll, I'm going to end up in a top position. I'm going to end up in control. That's an example. That's the easiest example to give of a pomission. So if you do a pomission and you find yourself on guard bottom, if you find yourself on the bottom, then it wasn't a pomission because you scrambled and lost something. You should always be able to stay in the position when you do a pomission, even if you don't get it. It'll make sense as we go into pomission number 1. In this pomission, which I call the arm hug, we're going to take our opponent from a great hugging harness position and exploit the bad placement of his arm. I'm going to be in cross sides top. I have my harness. And this is a real common position that this person brings their arm up, like up on my shoulder, or maybe even again starts pushing my chin or what have you. I'm going to be here and I'm going to look to take this bottom arm and grab for his elbow, or slightly above the elbow, kind of on the tricep area. As I do that, I'm going to take my elbow, this bottom elbow, and pull it across my body to my hip. It's real important that this elbow doesn't stop right in the middle of the body, but it comes all the way back to my hip. As I do that, I'm going to lean out on his arm. Boom. So my neck right here is out on his wrist. My hand is right on his elbow. I'm going to then take my other hand, pin his shoulder to the floor. I'm going to replace that left hand with my left knee, and then I'm going to lean with my body towards his tummy. And there's the permission.
Typical thing is I'm going to come in, slow roll for a while, warm up, go over technique. Typically I like to go with Michael or Tom because of their experience. These guys have huge game. Their game is amazing. So for me it's really good to get warmed up, get loose, and then we go over technique and they start to see, while we're slow rolling, a lot of times they'll show me additional techniques, places where I have a flaw in my game, because while we're slow rolling, a lot of times the guy's allowing you to get these moves. But basically, while we're going in this slow roll type situation, you're able to see flaws in a person's game. They'll stop you and say, hey, maybe this works when we're slow rolling, but whenever we start to go live, you're going to see this isn't going to work. So they'll stop you, show you different techniques, ways to improve upon that. And then that way, once you get into a live situation, you're able to basically have perfect technique or dang close to it.
So I'm right here, okay? Number one, and it really works when he droops his hand over my shoulder. That's like the easiest feed in the whole world. But you can still get it with some practice, even when it's just out, as long as you have this underhook. I'm gonna grab his tricep, I'm gonna pull my elbow to my hip, and I'm gonna start the motorcycle. I'm gonna roll my knuckles. So notice that I don't just pull my knuckles here. Watch my knuckles on my hand. I roll them. So I create a kind of a tension. His elbow is pointed up. 1, 2, I put my hand right on his shoulder and my weight's on him. So if he starts to move, I should be pretty stable right now. It could kind of wiggle. Right? I mean, I should be relatively stable. 3, I'm going to replace my left hand with my left knee. Right here. 4, I'm going to just grab my elbow, or my hand on his elbow, and just lean forward. Boom. Now, if his head, like if he starts to feed me to his head, right here, or is my head into his feet, go ahead. Boom. I can shuck my shoulders, I can hold off, but at any time, if I feel like I'm really in danger, boom, I just sprawl down. This is not a bad position. Okay, I can come around, and now I can wrap here, or I can all of a sudden just start the same thing on this side. But that permission is pretty, I mean, if you lapse that arm across, the secret sauce is pulling this elbow and rolling those wrists. If you get to here, my percentage is about 85% success. If you get this, you got it. Because all you have to do is weight him, spin around, and then just lean. It's right there. And if he pulls his arm out or if his elbow comes down, you can just come to that top side position. Okay, north, south, or cross sides. Okay, let's do that. Permission number 1, go. One thing, I think you coming over his head actually rotates your knee too far. Like your knee missed his shoulder. I think it might make sense to actually stay back further and take that left knee and cross his face. Yeah, there it is. I think that's better for you. I mean, I think that's the geography that Matt has to do. If he goes north-south, when your knee came around, it came way out here. You need to take this hand off to finish it. You need to replace with that knee. Yeah, I think that's fine. Technical training is teaching a concept or actually a technique in a very 1, 2, 3, 4 pattern. Very important, especially for a beginner who has no reference points. We may need to break things down and say, first, put your foot here. Second, move here. And there is a place for that. Conceptual teaching takes a more abstract look. We're talking about big concepts, about bracing or framing, about mobility or pressure, and it's thinking of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu in kind of maybe a different level, a more abstract level. But in being abstract, as long as we can identify those guideposts, those required things, we allow for a lot of differences in the execution. We teach very technically at a beginning level, but we try and move into that conceptual area as quickly as possible, because that allows the athlete to get the big rocks, the big things that are important, but it also allows them to find an execution that fits their body type, fits their temperament, and fits their kind of overall game. So conceptually, we've had to learn kind of this conceptual because we've had to create a lot on our own. I think what happens, and from what I've seen, is I've seen guys that have trained at other schools, and they are great technicians, but there's an element or a dimension of their game that may be missing because they don't have kind of that overarching geography or the understanding of these kind of bigger principles. Again, very good in the singular motion, but maybe missing kind of the overall flow of the game or the overall elements of pressure and mobility and so forth. Teaching conceptually allows us, it's a tool we use to think of jiu-jitsu differently and kind of get into a deeper structure of how the game works and how things relate. And it's worked very well for us. That's why we have a room of 60-some guys that all have great games, but their games are very unique because they play from that conceptual standpoint and not just a technical reference where everyone has a very similar kind of game.
Chuck it back here with that.
Good. But there you go. Good here, and then pull it to your hip. Your elbow. There. That's it. See how you're boom? So lean out a little bit. There you go. Now, where does this left hand go? Press down hard. Good. Replace it with your knee. Good. Now, hug and lean forward. Okay. This hand lower. There you go. Now lean forward. That's it.
All right.
Okay. If anything, you want to put this hand right on top of it or below it.
Okay.
But you don't want to go above it, because if you go above it, you're muffling the fulcrum point. You're taking, yeah. And I prefer just right on top of each other, because then that gives a cleaner kind of break.
Okay.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So what I don't want to do is this. I don't want to go like this. 1, 2. What I need to do is I need to go boom. I need to grab and pull at the same time. Okay? So then I'm going to keep it tight. I might have to do it twice. Boom. Now I'm going to hold it down. So Chris right now should feel like his arm's pretty stuck. Now Chris is big enough that I can't sit here forever. So I'm going to have to move pretty quickly. Boom. Okay? If I do lose it again, I'm just going to sprawl out. But right here, I'm just going to pull it in and then lean forward. I'm hugging this in as I lean my head forward. But I think you have to grab and lean at the same time. Because if you just grab, there's too much, there's no tension.
Right, and you're rolling it this way.
Yes.
Okay, that's what exactly what you're doing.
Good, yep. That's it. So you're really rotating it so the thumb goes.
Yeah.
Right, if they're here, the thumb's out. But by you rotating, that lines the thumb up. And then you keep tension on it. There are little details to the pomission. And I don't think that pomission is attribute based. It means I don't think you have to be super strong to do it. I don't think you have to have special attributes. But there are little details that are important. Okay, the first one is when I grab the tricep, I have to at the same time move my head pressure down his arm. Because if I just grab its tricep like this and I don't do anything else, he can roll his arm around. His arm can move. It can fish around. So I have to put tension in the line. It's the same thing as that intended lean. Right? I'm hugging the triceps and I'm leaning with intention. Okay? Now it's harder for him to move that arm out because I have that arm extended. He's strong here. He can curl me, right? He can push me a little bit. But when I stretch that arm out and extend it, the physics behind it is he's not nearly as strong anymore. That's the first thing. So as I grab, I'm going to grab this tricep, I'm going to move it around. I'm also, as I roll my knuckles, what's happening to his thumb is going like this. I want him to be the fawns. I want it thumb up. Okay? So I have to rotate it so his thumb is up. That's why I'm rolling that on the tricep. If I don't roll the tricep, I'm going to be here and the submission or the pomission isn't going to be lined up right. some details there. So, intended lean and rolling the knuckles. That's the first thing. The second thing I think a lot of people are missing on the finish. So let's talk about that. Okay, as I get here, I'm going to pull. Okay, I'm going to compress. Now I'm going to come around. Boom. At this moment, I'm going to grab my hand right on top of it. I don't like to go lower. I don't like to go higher. I like to confirm my grip. But I'm hugging my hands to my tummy. Now that really shouldn't be the submission, but it's making it really firm. It would be analogous to pinching your knees in an arm bar, right? I'm going to put the vice grip on. Now it's just an ever so gently tip. And it's my whole body against his arm that's fully extended and has no power in it, right? So I go here, I suck it in, boom. If you don't suck it in and you do this, look what happens. See how I tip myself? If I don't hold this, because this is the fulcrum point, if I let this just fall, well, wait a second. I'm just going to fall to the floor. But if I suck it into my tummy, now I lean forward, bink, there it is. Okay? So, this is here. Then I lean. And it's my whole body weight that's going to do it. That's why I like it, is because even big, huge kids that are much stronger than me, when I really straighten that arm out and then I do that intended lean with my body, it's not a muscle thing anymore. I'm in the joints. I'm in the bone structure at that point. Right? Their muscles are fully extended. We're past that.
How would you separate the arm from the body?
Good. Okay? That's a great question. I'm either going to be in this position here, right? So he's going to do it out, or I'm going to, try and get that harness. If his elbow is completely in, I can't do it. Right? If his elbow is completely in, the position's not ready. So I'm going to work on either doing this near side arm, right? I'm going to work on attacking his neck. Like if a guy gives great elbows, his elbows are great right down, you're like, dang, you can't do any arm bars in this guy. What has to be open? His neck. It has to be. He can't, unless he's just like some deformed creature, right? Because otherwise, if his elbows are down, his neck is open. If his neck is closed, then you're hocking those elbows. Good, you're getting underneath it, you're attacking him. So it has to be, you have to have an underhook or an inside position with the hands for this position. This position is similar to the last one, but we get a different feed from our opponent. I'm on cross sides top with my harness. This time as I go to pull his elbow across his body, he's going to drop his wrist. His thumb's going to point down to the ground. We call this the armpit slide, and you'll see why. As I go to pull, boom, his elbow comes down. So now I'm going to pull him up and plant on his head. I'm going to now orbit north-south. So I'm going to come around, boom, and I'm going to pull this arm out. From here, I'm going to take my back knee and come up onto his rib. The slide comes here. Notice my shin. It slides into my opponent's armpit. I'm underneath it, hooking it. Now I'm going to plant out with this arm, slide over the top, and extend. The key here is that I keep my body onto him. I really don't want to fall back. I prefer not to fall forward. I want to stay right here and extend those hips.
Here at the gym, they like to introduce you to a technique or a concept, and once you're familiar with that, they like to isolate that. So you run that through some drills, or some slow rolling, get used to that, and then like you to integrate that into your own individual game. So your individual game just depends on your own flexibility, your own size, your own strength and speed, and just your own feel. And so if a particular concept or technique isn't working for you, they'll show you little ways to tweak it, like maybe you'll shift your hips a certain direction, maybe you'll use your weight a little bit different, or use your body, just motion a little different. But here at the gym, they don't like to just put you into one category where this is exactly the way you have to do this technique. That's why it's more of a conceptual kind of, like this is an arm bar, but this isn't the only arm bar, and this isn't the only way to put it on. This is just, what's going to work, generally. But for you, you might need to change it up a little bit. And they'll go through that with you, and they help you, just to use your own style and your own body size, just to make that work for you.
Let's say I don't get that neck pressure on the arm fast enough and he drops his thumb to the floor. We're going to do one, I call it sliding into home plate. Okay? So I'm right here. I get Dave. I pull it up, but his arm goes down like this. Okay, so I have the tricep, that's good, but I don't have any tension on his arm. I have no intended lean. So what am I going to do? I'm going to put my hand on his head, boom, and I'm going to work around his body. So I'm going to spin to here. I'm going to grab his leg, and I'm going to pull his arm out, and I'm going to put my shin right on his rib. But here's what's important. Notice, my shin's perpendicular now. I'm going to slide, boom, right into home plate. My shin is in his armpit, my other leg's across his face. Now some guys really like to fall back, okay? But again, to me that defeats the purpose of a pomation. If I sit back like this, there's a window where he can suck his elbow through or do whatever. I hate that, probably because I'm a slow guy and I miss it. So let's go back. I want to keep him paperweighted the whole time. So as I pull it through, this shin goes here and then watch the revolution. It goes from here to, boom. My toe is pulled back, I'm underneath his armpit. This leg's back so you guys can see this. And there's tension. I'm parking the car in his armpit. Okay, we talked about parking the car. There's some tension there. I'm going to step over. I'm going to look right at Chris. I'm going to push my tummy forward. Okay, I'm not going to sit back. I'm going to droop on him. Okay, they always called me big boned and husky in school. Might as well celebrate it. Okay, if Dave pulls the elbow out, that's fine. I can sit right here and then slide right back. Boom, and be cross sides top.
The thing that made me have an epiphany about finishes, and that's how I want to put my stamp on, is I want to be a finisher. I don't believe in just rolling around. I want someone to know that I beat them and that I beat them handedly. And the way I actually started learning finishes really well was learning how to defend finishes really well. And that was by rolling with people that were much better than me, getting me in really bad situations. And through that, I learned the little ways that I could get out. But then when I reverse the roll, I know what that person's going to do on the bottom to try to get out of those positions. And I started putting a system together of 5 to 6 moves ahead of time. So if I give anyone advice, it's you're not just going for an arm bar. You should have 5 or 6 moves ready before that arm bar doesn't work. Now that's hard. It takes a lot of practice, but with that, you don't expend a lot of energy actually, because you're okay if the arm bar slips, because you're getting rolled over into a triangle or a choke, and it makes the jiu-jitsu a lot of fun when you start getting into that. That's when you see the light of what it's all about.
Drop your thumb. Good. So I'm going to push his head. I'm going to come around. I'm going to grab here and pull, step. At this point, I'm going to slide here. Okay, see where my hip is? I'm on my side. My leg's here. I'm going to grab, pull over here. I'm going to grab my lapel. I don't want to be down here. I'm going to pick this up. I'm going to look back and raise my tummy. Boom. Okay. But I'm pinching here. Boom. Right? But look where my tummy's going. I don't want to be this way. Okay. I want to be kind of bleeding diagonal. Okay. Okay? Hang tough. Don't move from your spot, but I want to show you something. I'm going to talk to it, but Eric's the one who does it magically. I mean, he really does it a beautiful job. He has very fluid hips. But the issue is when we get, and it's a little awkward because we don't like this altitude thing usually, when our shin is on him, I want to slide that shin this way. You're pinning, like going straight down, and you're going to take it that way. So my shin should be pointing right at Carlos. That's what the motion looks like. But it's an awkward, it doesn't feel so comfortable. So notice right now, his shin is pointing straight down. He's going to impale me, but he slides. See how that shifted through? See where his butt is? Now, yes. He's really, like he's diagonal across me, right? But what he's doing is he's pinching his knees, and even if I, like, stay there, even if I go forward, he's just going to go forward and tap me out. If I sit here and drop him back, he's going to go back. If I go back, look, as long as he stays connected to my tricep, it's all good. With this permission, we're going to use some energies we talked about earlier, that hip heist, contouring, and so forth. What I'm going to do is I'm going to hip heist against my opponent's brace. I'm going to then step over and barbed wire him. They're going to move to a side mount and set up that arm lock, and then I'm going to take an arm lock permission. The key here is the whole time I'm keeping weight and pressure on. There shouldn't be a moment when my opponent feels like, there's a free spot for me to escape. So we start here in this cross sides position. I can be in a harness. My opponent pushes with his arm. I'm going to hip heist. Boom, and step over. I'm going to spin around and come to this side. Boom, I now have both arms. I have his top arm controlled with my chest. His bottom arm is controlled with my hand. So I have both his arms. I'm in good position. From here, I'm going to switch my hips again, and I'm going to step over. Boom. Now I'm going to work to a mount position and then to a side mount. So here I'm on his side. I have my heel into his hip. I'm on top. The whole time, I want to stay tight. Now I'll thread my arm through, and here's where I'm going to work. Over, I'm going to drive that heel in, and I'm going to step across. I'm going to bring his arm out and plant. Here, hip comes forward. I mentioned before that we talk a lot to our athletes about the difference between fighting to win and training to learn. Our goal is to be a teaching institution, and so yeah, you have to have those rolls, you have to have those spar sessions where you turn off all the safeguards and you just let it all hang out, but you can get diminishing returns. I mean, if you do that all the time, you sometimes limit your growth curve, and so we really take teaching and learning very well. In that same belief about consistency, I'm a big proponent, as I think everyone in the gym is, it's better to train 6 days in a week for 30 minutes to 40 minutes at each go than to train once a week for 3 hours or twice a week for 2 hours, because your brain can't stay with it, your body can't stay with it. It's really not a healthy way to do it. And it's kind of like the more you do jiu-jitsu on a consistent basis, the more natural and intuitive it is. Your body begins to respond and move because it's used to that constant reminder of what a roll is and what pressure is and what mobility is and so forth. But I think as a gym as a whole, that's the other thing that's been very powerful, is that we have people, we've been around for 6 years now, we have people that have been with us for 6 years. And that's, to me, the highest form of flattery, is that it's not about me, it's not about you, it's about this room, this gym has something that they find so valuable that they're willing to commit that kind of time to. And we really want to be accessible not only to the most intense athlete, but to people who have day jobs and families and commitments. We want to be a part of wellness and a part of a lifestyle, not just something that someone does intensively for 6 months or a year and then says, see ya. Because if that happens in a weird kind of way, I feel like they didn't get it. Because if they just can say at the end of a year, yeah, I can't do it anymore, it's like, you didn't see it. You didn't get it. Because if you really got it, once you get it, you just can't walk away and say, yeah, see ya, it was fun. Because it's that impactful. It makes me a better person. I think I'm a pretty good high school teacher, but the reason I think I'm a pretty good high school teacher is I'm here, and it balances me out. And I think I'd be kind of a jerk and not a very happy person if I didn't have the outlet that I have through jiu-jitsu and didn't get to feel that energy and that joy that I get through training as an athlete. He's pressing here. I'm going to turn my hips. I'm going to insert the car. Boom. Okay, I'm going to cross over. So I'm bringing my hips here. I'm on his triceps. I spin. Now I cross grab. Right now we call this a barbed wire. Okay, I own his top arm. I own his bottom arm. Okay, I'm now going to switch my hips. Boom, and mount. Now, if I have a gi, I can do the Ezekiel choke because right now his arms are dead. Okay, but this works with no gi too, everything I just did so far. I'm going to bring my hand underneath, pass it, and then move him. So I'm going to roll him and kind of contour around to get to this side mount. If I fold the elbow, I can keep taking him to his belly, but many times they kind of stop. So I'm going to go here, boom, grab his arm, cross the face. I'm going to pinch my knee and step up. The key is that I suck him in and lean this way. I'm going to stay on him. If I have to put my hand down, I do. I pinch my knees, boom, there's the tap. If I fall back, I hold my heels to me and I stay on them and I'll take this tap. I would prefer not to be here. This to me is a moderately successful permission. A successful permission is me sitting right here, pinching and extending this way. My weight's on him. If Dave pulls his elbow out, Boom, that's fine. I can stay on top. Square back up, I'm in mount, or go to cross sides top. I want to stay on top at all costs. That's my goal.
You know, Straight Blast Gym is a real family gym. So moms are in here, and kids are in here, and there's teenagers in here. And it's not just guys training for mixed martial art gyms. It's not just all the techniques being taught to a competition team. The same technique that is considered, oh, look at this new improvement that somebody came up with. That same technique is taught to somebody who maybe doesn't know anything versus the guy who's just discovered it. Oh my God, this is great, you know? And he wants to share it with everybody around him, not just somebody who's gonna, you know, help coach him or anything like that. I think that's unique. My experiences outside of the club have been positive, insofar as anytime I learn anything outside of the club, I come back, I work it, people are genuinely interested in what I as an individual have to offer, you know, and I'm genuinely interested in growing my game. So it's, I guess overall, because everybody's so interested in being growth oriented and being on that creative edge, that there's not really a wrong answer. In that sense of trial and error. You know, you go out, you learn something new. There's never a sense of, oh, you went over here, or there's, you know, that political edginess that sometimes approaches certain associations in martial art communities. You know, they can kind of cut themselves off from the whole outside world. But the Straight Blast Gym has an embracing philosophy, to go back to the first question, you know, and that connects in that way.
Pushing on your hip, if you can get in the habit of doing this, then walking forward and then stepping across, if you can just do that, that's awesome. Okay, get that tonight. Okay, let me see you do it, Thomas.
Now from here.
Give him that feed, Sarah. Give him that feed. So push your right arm into his hip. Good, Thomas, drive in, yes. Now, big step over, Thomas, big step over. Don't worry about the hand, just step with your hips. Good, and press that. So get this leg out of there. Sprawl on her tricep. She squished you, you squish her. Get off your knee, Thomas. What are you being so nice to your sister for? Get off your knee. That's what I'm talking about. Now, walk around to cross sides. Yeah, she's smiling. Keep coming all the way to cross sides. And bring your right hand around her head. No, right hand around the near side of her head. So this hand right, there you go. Good, now switch your hips towards your feet and mount, step to mount. You got it. Now take your left hand, go underneath her head and grab her wrist. You're good. Push with your right hand, push her elbow down and turn her on her side. Good, bring your left knee up by her head. Left knee up by her head. Bring your left arm over her head, around, you bring that elbow around her head first. Yep, good, push her chin down, now step over. Good, lean towards her hips and extend. Pinch your knees. There you go, pinch your knees. That's the idea. All right, go ahead and go on your back. So, how'd we do on that last one? Perfectly, excellent. There's a lot of technique to that, right? I mean, essentially we're combining a whole bunch of things. We're combining the contour, that's what we're doing when we get, when we get here, we're contouring, right? We're using my hip girdle to turn him, okay? I'm spinning on it, boom, and I'm there. Okay, here's the barbed wire. Okay, I got him in barbed wire, boom, switch, boom, now I'm out with barbed wire, okay? But I'm just gonna, again, contour again. I'm gonna orbit around him. I'm gonna move him, boom, come up here to side mount. From here, bring my hands in, come across. This is all the same. The difference is when I pull up, I'm gonna slide this leg under. Okay, I'm gonna pinch, so now I'm going diagonal. Okay, see how my legs are going diagonal? I'm pinching, and I'm always pulling my heels to my butt. I don't wanna straighten them out, because that gives them space. So I'm pulling here. As I straighten down that arm, I'm pushing my hips forward. That's what I wanna do, okay? If I lose it, again, I'm still gonna be on top. If he starts to roll me back, I can come back down right into here. Boom, I'll stay right here. Okay, and then I can work my other game, but I'm still on top. But there are a lot of pieces to that. So if you're feeling like, dang, it broke apart, there are about 3 different sections to that one. That's a busy one. But at the same token, I like the idea that you're taking a move and it's compounding contour on another contour on another contour. It's chaining those contouring actions together, which is a pressure energy. Okay? Here's, yep.
Do you ever use your left arm to lace his legs?
Show me what you mean.
How did I get this game? Well, it's all about love. So, you know, you're basically got to this point. Oops, sorry. Lost my key. So you basically looking his whole way here.
Oh, good. I see what you're saying. So you're going to anchor off his leg?
Okay,
yeah.
Yeah, now if he moves back roll.
Right, you have that hip. It's a nice movement. It's very nice.
The key is that the heel and the armpit.
Right. You need to take that. Right. You need to take that foot that's standing vertically, and you need to get it slid in underneath his armpit, and that's that sliding and contouring. Your body needs to kind of find the groove that it fits nicely to take that arm. You'll feel that as you practice it.
Put weight on the hand and on the mat.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid to put weight on that hand.
Good.
Base.
So as you're here, boom. Let me get over here. As I'm here, what I'm going to do is bring this under. Okay, so I'm going to pull this under, and I'm going to brace out on this. And you can hold, you know, kettle hut's doing this. That's great. You can also, boom, just base out here. So now my weight's here. This makes this very free. Boom, and then I can huck it. Suck it in. Boom. Okay, as I work my way down the body, I just stretch out, right? I don't want to do this stuff where there's a disconnect between his wrists and my chest. What I do is I just work my way up that forearm. So I come up the forearm, and my body just stretches it out. On this formation, we're going to exploit our opponent's push into our hip. I'm going to be in a little different geography than before. I'm not going to be really close up on his landing pad. I'm going to be kind of down by his hips. But I'm going to take my near side shin, bring it up into his armpit, and go for that submission. The key is, during the whole motion, I want to keep weight and pressure. I want to maintain my position throughout it all, and then I'll take that submission. You can do it one time slowly, and then one time normal speed.
I drink a lot of Starbucks coffee, and I happened to see this guy walk up, and I see this guy that has cauliflower ears. So the first thing I say to him is I say, "Hey, where'd you wrestle?" He says, "Hey, I've never wrestled before in my life, but I've done Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu." And I've been interested in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu because I like ultimate fighting and things like this, and I like the combative sports. So I talked to him for a little bit, found out that it was Tom Oberhue, actually the co-owner of the gym. We spoke for a while. I came in, gave it a shot, loved it. So I was hooked, day one.
If I'm in here, okay, I'm playing tight, I'm working this, but he's maybe being really clammy, he's really being difficult. I can kind of pop up, and he might start to push with this arm or do whatever. Here, you're going to tether and pull in. Okay? Michael does a version of this, but his is off of pure motion. Mine, I'm doing it off of the fact that maybe I'm really grinding him and he's really starting to get pushy. Boom, then I'm going to sit right in here. And this is the same idea as sliding into home plate. It's just a flatter angle. From here, I'm going to step onto this arm, come over, and then boom, I'm going to extend. But again, I'm driving into this arm. Where I don't want to go is back. I don't like that. Now Michael does, but Michael moves a whole heck of a lot better than I do. He really plays with that fluid flowing pressure. Okay, I like that weighted pressure. So that works better for me. My setup usually is that I'm pulverizing them so much, they get kind of over anxious and they push. And I'm looking to capitalize on that near side arm. So if I'm in here, right, I go boom. Now time out though. Don't lean quite so far back. Drive the shin in and push that way. Yes! Now step out a little farther. Good. Step over, hook your heel, pinch, now extend. That's it. A couple things. There is an element of timing or setup on this. Okay, there's an element of timing or setup on this because very rarely is someone going to sit there and leave this hand out. Right? They're not going to just sit there with it. But that's what I talk about, that pressures. When I do a smearing or contouring pressure and they're really starting to get, if I give them a little space, they're going to go, oh, there's my opportunity, push, boom, and I slide right into it. I'm spring loaded. So you got to look for that pretty quickly. Another thing I'm seeing is, again, when people come, really base out here. You need to commit your weight, because if you kind of hover here, they stay flat, and they're going to sit you back. Perfect. Okay, when I commit over here, I, in a turn, essentially roll Eric over a little bit. See how I got him on his side? That gives me a better angle. So when I come over, I hook my heel, and I pull my heel to my butt. I don't want to straighten it out, because that pushes him away from me. So I really want to get my legs parallel. I hug, and then I finish. But it really means that I tabletop on this arm out here. Some things to think about. It's there, and it's about contouring. It's about finding those openings in the body. That's why we call it a pomission. So when we're in this cross sides top geography, we're working that lockdown and all those different pomissions, we're going to get lots of turbulence. The guy on bottom is not going to be cooperative. And there are times when we can work to north-south, and that geography can be a little safer. And so this is a pomission from north-south. It's a choke, but it lives up to that definition. It keeps pressure on your opponent, it keeps your position, and it is applying that submission. So I'm going to walk us through that right now. As I work to this north-south geography, I'm going to get one arm underneath and one arm on top. So I kind of have an over-under connection. I'm going to have my head towards his tummy, and I'm going to pick his head up as I drive my leg in and put it behind his head. I'm propping him up. He's like in a half crunch. I'm going to take this hand and punch through. It's really important that I get my armpit around his chin or as deep to his neck as possible. The tighter I am here, the better the pomission. So I'm going to punch this through. Boom. I'm going to cross my hands underneath, and I'm not going to grab. That's going to make it worse. I want to let them slide. I'm now going to walk out and sprawl or landslide my hips away as I pinch my elbows in. As I do that, there's going to be a lot of force. Perfectly done, it should be a carotid choke. If not, you're still going to get a pressure choke. It's going to feel like his head's going to pop. A great pomission in this geography.
I think everyone here is tough. I think we weed out like all the people, you know, who have like a big ego. They don't really last too long because, like I said, you know, you got to wrestle. It's not about talking or like being a cool guy. You got to wrestle, you know, everybody to be respected here, I feel. And I don't know, you know, excuses are frowned upon. So I think like in that sense, you know, personality-wise, people are pretty much the same, pretty like lighthearted. And what I consider, I mean, the people here, I mean, are the best people I've ever met in my life, period. I mean, I consider everyone here like family. But as far as like, because there is like that really open climate, everybody wrestles different. I've never wrestled, like I was talking to Chris Wolfer today, and we both like use like the same type of guards and have like similar, like we both use basically like butterfly and X guards. Those are kind of our guards, but I'm more of like a passive guy, so my game is more like a flowy game, and he's like tight, like attacking game, and he likes to initiate the movement. So while, you know, from the outside it might look the same, everybody's style is different. Chapman, you know, uses a spider guard, so, which is awesome as a student because, you know, you can look around and, you know, everybody has something to offer you.
This one's a choke, okay? And this one I get off of north-south. I get it off of north-south because when guys get pretty frustrated, it's north-south is kind of like a safe place. It makes them even more frustrated. So what's going to happen is the guy's popping and turning. I end up moving in north-south, and typically I find myself with one hand over, one hand under. What I mean by that is one hand's out by his head, one hand's down by his armpit. Okay? What I like to do here is I'm going to grab his head and I'm going to walk my legs underneath him. So I'm going to go right here. Okay? I'm putting his head on my thigh. My head is in his tummy. I'm going to push this hand through, and it's going all the way through my legs. The other hand, which is coming under the armpit, crosses. Okay? At this point, I'm going to sprawl back. I call it landsliding my hips, and I'm going to pinch my elbows. So I'm right in here, and I'm going to go right there. Okay? And it's a choke on this side. Okay? Now, the choke is a setup. It's really difficult with people that have narrow necks. Okay, it works. The bigger the neck, the easier it is. Said another way, I've yet to get this successfully on Michael. Okay, pencil neck. Okay, and we don't want to cut that one. That one needs to go there. No, I'm kidding. So the point is, I can't get Michael because he knows how to keep that neck and so forth. The bigger, like, you know, guys that are really thick, I'm more successful because they give you a bigger, you know, kind of sphere, a bigger circle to work with. Okay, but the key is the setup. Once you drop into this, it's very hard to adjust. So let's talk about that setup one more time. I have one over, one under. Watch what I do. I come up on my feet and I walk my knees forward. Boom. Okay, I put his head on my thigh. I punch this hand all the way through. I need my elbow tight. Okay, boom. This hand crosses, so I'm crisscrossed. I don't grab. That slows me down. I just cross my wrist. Now I'm going to sprawl back. I'm going to pull my shoulders back as I bring my elbows in. Boom. This is one, though, that takes some timing. There's a feel to it. Okay? The biggest thing that I found as far as coaching that helps people, and it goes back to body geometry, is I want Eric's chin deep into my armpit. Okay? It will not work if he's like this. I need to punch my arm through so my armpit collapses as tight around that area below his chin as possible on his neck. If I'm loose and there's any wiggle room at all, he's going to be able to breathe. He's going to be one of those slow leak tires. And he can sit there for quite a while. Okay, so one last time. I'm here north-south. One hand is over his arm, other hand is free. I walk up. Boom, I put his head on my shoulder. The reason I do that is to get a good punch through here. I drive deep through, right there. Other hand, crosses. I now sprawl backwards. Watch my hips. They go away as I pull my shoulders back. And then I can even walk on my tiptoes backwards. So I'm walking on my tiptoes backwards. And then you're back there. Are you grabbing? Just cross your wrist. Now, as you sprawl back. My own wrist? What? Or do you cross them? Just cross them. Now, as you sprawl back, pinch your elbows and landslide. You gotta pinch your elbows. Go away. Oh, like that. Now go away. Keep going. That's it. Okay. You gotta walk back even just a smidge further, but that's it. It's like a noose that just gets tighter and tighter.
I've tried it on people, but I've never gotten it.
Yeah, it's just, you gotta get that feel. But the key is get your elbows, the key is to always get your elbows really tight early. So I'm here. Up. Ah, Jesus, he didn't have no neck.
They're both the same.
You didn't get my windpipe right.
Well, it's not supposed to be windpipe.
Really?
It's supposed to be carotid if it's anything, because windpipe's right here. Yeah. But really, what it more than not, it's not really an elegant choke. It just feels like blood pressure. Your head's gonna pop off. But your neck is so small, I can barely find it. It's really hard.
I've been doing security for about 12 years, and I've trained with certain guys. Just they like wrist locks, or they like throwing people down, or just beating people up. And it's never been my gig. And, the wrist locks work occasionally on somebody that's intoxicated, but get somebody who really wants to fight and somebody that's really big, kind of stuff doesn't work. There's been a few instances where they use the crazy monkey, or the shield to kind of enter in and control somebody's arms. I've used a hip throw before. I've used a couple of standing arm bars. I've used a Kimura before. And so yeah, there's a lot of times that I've used that stuff. And even more just the training itself, where you're playing with all these different body styles, different body types. There's different, just everybody's different styles. You get used to dealing with different things. And so when you're out, in the real world, for some reason, it just makes you more calm and collected, where you can look at a situation and kind of see, this guy's drunk, but he's maybe got his hands up, so he knows a little bit, so I better cover up a little, or his hands are down, so I'm just going to get good control on him and hold him down. So yeah, I've used it several times.
Yes, sir.
I got a question. What if he pushes his chin down before he actually...
I'd rather just choke, dude.
It becomes, it does. It becomes really kind of like a TMJ kind of thing, right? I mean, it's not a choke. It's kind of a brute force thing. They're going to get pretty spastic and want to get out of it. At the same token, though, this is a choke that if you need to be patient with it. Like, I've sat there as long as a minute and a half, but at the same token, don't burn your forearms. Look where you end up. If you burn the batch, you're still north-south top with great position, and you've still just made him work really hard. Okay, so let it go. Don't burn your arms out, and then just keep working those arms. Keep playing your game. Okay, so don't stay on a choke so long that all of a sudden your forearms are dead and you can't do anything. All right, that one's an acquired taste. That took me a little while to develop. The key thing is getting that chin up into your armpit. It's also, as you sprawl away, there's a tendency when we sprawl to let our elbows flare. So when I'm here and I sprawl, a lot of people will do this, right? What we really want to do, that's why we're crossing, is that as we sprawl, we're doing this, right? Our elbows are getting tighter, okay? And so it's that leverage between your rib and your elbow. Ooh, see, and watch my arm. I guess you can go watch my thumbs, because it's hard to see with the gi on. But as I sprawl back, I'm rolling my arms. Right, as I sprawl back. So I'm here, and I'm like this, my palms are up, I'm gonna sprawl, and then my palms are gonna rotate. So to get that tight rotation, boom. But the key is everything that's in the setup. It's really hard to tighten this submission up once you sprawl. It's all in the preset. If you get a real tight preset and you sprawl well, you're gonna get them to tap. If you don't, it's gonna be kind of like, you're gonna feel it. Let that go and stay in positional dominance. We want position first. So another thing that we really emphasize is jiu-jitsu is as much an athletic game as it is an intellectual game. That you need, as a wrestler, to be thoughtful, and you need to understand kind of the geography or the way an event or a match is going to play out, but also what your arguments or kind of what your responses are going to be. There is a part of training that's really exhilarating, and that's being in the moment. You don't want to overthink things, but the idea of being very reflective and thoughtful, the idea of thinking of jiu-jitsu in thinking about jiu-jitsu and really reflecting and having kind of, I guess, a mental picture as well as that physical athletic picture is very powerful. We find, and I think that's a big attribute, is that our wrestlers, when they're training, they're doing great stuff out on the mat, but they're always thinking about it. They're thinking about it when they're driving home, they're thinking about it when they're at work, they're thinking about it throughout the day. And what that does is, in thinking about it and working it through and using that imagery and kind of having those ideas in your mind, it allows you to perform better athletically. That we talk over and over again that it's better to train 6 days a week for 20 minutes at a go. It's also better to keep thinking about it, like problem solve, and not just only think about jiu-jitsu the moment you touch hands and stop thinking the moment you're done rolling. So that intellectual piece, or that cognitive piece about thinking and rehearsing, problem solving and running through things in your mind is a big element. And we spend a lot of time with our guys talking about, what to think about, what are your goals, what's your strength list, and what's your to work on list in your head. And that processing, I think, accelerates the learning as well. It's more than just a recreational or physical thing. It's also a mental thing. It's an intellectual thing about how you perceive the wrestle and kind of what your strategy is. And that creates wrestlers with lots of depth, because they're not just athletic. They have a strategy and they have a conceptual framework that allows them to really execute a more complex game. Weighted pressures, the lockdown, permissions. We use those weighted pressures as tools for us to gain positional advantage on our opponent. Whether it's hugging, sagging, or contouring, we're going to use them in combination to get that position. The lockdown, both the technical and the conceptual side, are tools we use to maintain position. We're going to stay on top of our opponent, which leads us to the permission. The permission is a submission with weight and pressure, while at the same time maintaining positional dominance.